When your memory is suffering and your brain health is declining, this can be very frustrating. Unfortunately, it can happen at any age, and most of you will have no clue what to do about it when it hits you. Now, as you get older, this becomes even more frustrating because you start to think of, could I have Alzheimer's? Could I get dementia? What does my future look like? And so when you're younger, it tends to really interrupt you in your day-to-day performance and your mental task. However, as you get older, you really start to think about serious disease. So let's go ahead and talk about how you can improve your brain health. I have been there where I struggled with my own brain health and there were no answers for me. So let me give you answers on how you can improve your brain health today. I first want to start with exercise. This is important because there are studies that show when you do high intensity interval training, it does some interesting things to your brain. Specifically, it actually makes structural and connectivity changes in the hippocampus, which is very important for learning and memory. Also, exercise does some other interesting things for your brain. It's going to help actually increase something called brain-derived neurotrophic factor, which is responsible for brain health and developing healthy neuronal activity. But also when you exercise, you're going to actually increase oxygenation and blood flow to the brain. Back when I was in college and we would have these classes that were going 6 to 8 hours a day, one of the things our professors would always tell us, don't go sit down for lunch and have a huge lunch. Go to the gym and exercise, get some blood flow to your brain because your brain performance will be much better for the remainder of the day versus being all sleepy. So exercise is important. Let's talk about fats for a second because there's a very, very particular fat that's important to have for brain health, and that is DHA. DHA has been shown to be deficient in those suffering with brain health issues like dementia or Alzheimer's. DHA has also been shown to actually improve those suffering with ADD or ADHD. So when we look at DHA, it's a very, very important structural component to the brain. So therefore, when you supplement with DHA, it's very, very positive for your overall brain health and performance. Let's talk about real quick a few of the symptoms that you may be suffering from that are an indication that this topic is very important to you. One is going to be just brain fatigue, okay? This is where your brain doesn't have the energy to perform no matter what time of day. It's like you just feel that sluggishness in your brain function. Poor brain endurance. This is basically when you're actually doing a task, you can perform well for maybe a short period of time and your brain just runs out of steam. So imagine you're working and you focus on something real hard and maybe you're in meetings and you're about 30 minutes in and your brain is totally checked out. That's poor brain endurance, very common. Brain fog, that's pretty self-explanatory where you just feel there's this fog and your brain is never able to function to its full capacity. Mood changes, okay? So if you're suffering with like anxiety and depression and just overall poor mood, this is a sign that your brain is struggling. And then also memory, which we're talking about. And then even we could go and look at things like psychiatric disorders where maybe you're suffering with like bipolar or schizophrenia or maybe even obsessive compulsive disorder. So many different psychiatric disorders all start with just a decline in brain health, right? So though you may have some very mild symptoms like this starting off, they can actually continue to pour over into more severe brain health conditions. I'll talk about more of that in just a moment. Let's go ahead and talk about brain micronutrients. Getting proper nutrition to your brain is very important. There's a lot of different brain micronutrients that are very, very impactful that most of us never think about in order to improve brain health. And so some of them include CoQ10, acetyl L-carnitine, phosphatidylserine, and also alpha-lipoic acid. When you start getting your brain these proper micronutrients, your brain will start functioning much better. And what I'll do is I'll put a link in the description below to a brain optimization kit that I actually put together in my clinic in order to help people improve their brain health. It has memory supports, brain micronutrients, it's got the DHA, it has all the necessary things. And when people start taking this, I find that they like to stay on it because it helps their brain health that much. It's a game changer when you have a brain that feels like it's just got a fog over it all the time and you lift that fog and your brain is able to perform well. Oh my goodness, it helps so much. And this also leads us into the next topic of inflammation, okay? You can get something called brain inflammation, and when that inflammation strikes in the brain, unfortunately it ends up turning into a negative feedback cycle where inflammation causes more chaos, which ends up in more inflammation. And as a result, this causes a lot of brain issues like we're talking about here. The good news is that when we start talking about the topic of like inflammation and brain micronutrients and the DHA and all of those things, they all work together. So if you start implementing that, what you're going to find is that as you pour on the micronutrients and the DHA, the inflammation starts to go down. And that's part of the brain healing process. When you have brain inflammation, everything goes wrong. And so in order to make everything better, you just start implementing all of these things that we're talking about, exercising, getting more oxygenation to the brain. Let's talk about fasting real quick, okay? Because fasting is important. When you fast, what you can do is you can put your body into a state of ketosis. The ketones that are actually coming from the fat tissue on your body are actually very healing to your brain. The other thing that's important about fasting as it pertains to your memory and your brain health is that when you're fasting, what you're going to find is that you increase that brain-derived neurotropic factor, which we talked about happens when you exercise. So you get this very brain healing process that's occurring when you're in a fasted state. So that's really good too. Start implementing like 24-hour fast, 48-hour fast. It's very good for your brain. The other thing to take into consideration is sleep. And I know this one's pretty obvious, but it's something that many of us don't get enough of. And most of us are getting a lot of time laying in bed, but we're not getting a quality of sleep, okay? Quality of sleep matters. This became an issue for me many years ago when we had young children keeping us up all night. I actually started monitoring my sleep and I found out, well, I have been laying in bed for 8 hours. However, I only had deep sleep for about 40 minutes, right? And this became an issue for me because I couldn't focus, my memory was shot, and so sleep is really important. In fact, there's studies that show that many people can actually start to experience dementia-like symptoms or Alzheimer's-like symptoms simply because they're not getting enough sleep. So your sleep is very important for your brain. So if we go in and we pour on these micronutrients and we exercise and we focus on, lowering inflammation in the brain and fasting and do all the right things, this will start to clear up. And I can tell you from experience, when you have a brain that's not functioning well and you go do all the right things to promote brain healing, it is a game changer for you. So whenever it comes to actually improving brain function, it's about healing the brain. It's not about stimulating the brain with things such as caffeine. We want to heal the brain so that every single day you can wake up with 100% focus and function, and you improve your cognitive abilities so that you can live every day to the fullest. I'm Dr. Nick Zarowski. Give this video a thumbs up. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel. If you enjoyed this video, I think you'll really like this one over here next.